The race to who will lead the Victorian Liberal Party is tightening after Polwarth MP Richard Riordan ruled himself out, and it leaves former Shadow Attorney General John Pesutto and Shadow Police Minister Brad Batten as frontrunners for the top job. Well, joining me live is former Howard Government Minister Peter McGauran. Great to see you. How are you?
Great to be here, Janie.
Now, this is very interesting, isn't it? The new Liberal leader. Who do you think, Brad Batten or John Pesutto?
It seems to be John Pesutto, but it is a classic choice for the Liberal Party. John Pesutto represents an ongoing tradition of inner city, very urbane, professional class leader, as against Batten, former policeman, former small businessman, youngish, with a suburban family. I personally, if I had a vote, and I obviously don't, I would go for Batten. I think you can build a great narrative around him, and he's not just another white-bread, liberal, semi-aristocrat.
Were you surprised that Pesutto won back his seat from 2018?
Yes, mammoth effort, and that's probably the reason, Jane, he's got his nose in front of Batten, that people really respect that he fought off not just the Labor incumbent, but he also thwarted the Teals' ambition in that seat, which they thought they were going to get for certain.
It's hard to believe it was a week ago that we were just, sitting here talking about the election, but, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because, as most people know, people absolutely love Dan Andrews, or they don't. It's very, very divided. He won well and truly with the lead. What's your take on it? Because a lot of people saying that the Liberals didn't have a very strong campaign. There wasn't a lot on the debt, which quadrupled since 2018, and COVID wasn't really in the big picture either.
All of that is true. It was a stunning election victory by the Labor Party. They've got 53 seats at the moment. They had 55 and they might actually get back to 55 because of the seats in doubt. My Labor insiders were telling me they'd have been euphoric with 47 seats. It exceeded even their expectations. He's a polarising figure. The Liberals were hopeless leading up to the campaign. They were almost invisible. They had no cut-through lines. They should have concentrated on debt, which is the worst in Australia and is unsustainable for the future. In regard to the COVID, it does seem that human nature kicked in. People do want to move on, but there's no doubt, he's got his detractors, even haters, and he's got his rusted-on supporters.
In your career, have you seen, like when he announced the speech, he had his wife there introducing him. I haven't seen that kind of thing before. Is that something you've seen before?
No, it's very American, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where couples are forever holding hands, and if they're not, then that will be a matter of speculation. Look, I think it's very much that they've gone through hell as a family. Round-the-clock, heavy police detail, threats made both publicly and surreptitiously. In the end, I think they wanted to declare to the world that they've come through as a family and they're taking the renewed mandate from the people happily together. I don't think it's much more than that, Janie, but it was unusual.
Yeah, well, certainly, as you said, they have been through a lot indeed, and regardless of what side you're on, we don't need any violence or anything like that. It's not necessary at all. A very interesting one as well, the independents. We looked at the federal election in May, and I think there were about 10 seats that were won by the independents. Not a great deal. A couple of them lost to the Nationals, including from Ali Cupper to Jane Bedham, and also in Shepparton. And a lot of the Teal independents didn't come through. Is that due to the laws in terms of the donations, perhaps, where it's a lot lower, only sort of like $4,000 for 4 years, compared to a lot more in the millions for the federals?
You've hit the nail on the head, Janie. I agree with you. It's capped at $4,000 total donation over the parliamentary period every 4 years. So it limits the Teals. By the way, if you look at the seats, the Teals and independents, with a bit more luck, literally a couple of hundred votes, they could have ended up, the Greens included, with several more seats. They just didn't have the luck. It was all Daniel Andrews, it appears. The Nationals did brilliantly, getting 3 independent seats back. No, but I suppose you can't put the failure of the Teals down just to the limited donations and their ability to fund widespread campaigns, although that is by far the number one issue. I think the heat was taken out of it because it was either a re-endorsement of Dan Andrews and his government and all it represents, whether you agree or not, or the Liberals. And you often get when on clear choices like the two major parties, that the independents, including the Teals, drop out.
A couple of well-known people, not politicians, Paul Mercurio, Sam Groth, they both got in.
Fantastic. The more diverse people we get into Parliament, other than those with professional or academic qualifications, the better. We need more plumbers, electricians, farmers, teachers and so on.
Absolutely. Okay, so 61 bills passed in 6 months. The Albanese government doing pretty well, you'd have to say, but the proof is in the pudding as we head towards the next 6 months and forward.
Well, Mr Albanese's honeymoon has continued longer than I thought. Of course, there are reality checks next year, particularly on energy, cost of living, but you've got to say that he's achieved his major objectives. The Industrial Relations Bill, although he's lost a lot of skin on the way through in regard to with business who feel ambushed, and it is a pro-union bill, obviously. Thankfully, there are a number of amendments to support small business, but for medium-sized and large business, this is very dangerous. Then there was the Independent Commission Against Corruption. That was nicely refined so that you could have private hearings before you have public. So all in all, you've got to give the Albanese high marks for an activist and successful parliamentary session.
So what do we anticipate moving forward? What are the next stages we need to look out for?
The big one is undoubtedly energy, cost of living and debt and budgetary repair, because there are a lot of demands on the public purse, particularly after those shocking floods and the infrastructure damage. So it can only get harder. That's an axiom of political life. But you've got to give Mr Albanese personally and his government credit. And it poses all sorts of issues and challenges for Peter Dutton, who's also doing very well given the circumstances, and the Liberal Party. Who do they represent? What do they oppose? The Voice is the big test for the Liberal Party coming up.
All right, now just quickly, this time tomorrow, the Socceroos, are they going to beat Argentina?
That's unquestionably. I've already plunged heavily.
They can do it, can't they?
Of course.
Lionel who?
Yeah, some hack from Argentina.
Exactly, yeah. It's only his last game. Who
yes.
Socceroos.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks very much, Peter.